A bell begins ringing before sunrise in a small town somewhere in medieval Europe. It is not a gentle sound. It is iron striking iron, loud enough to wake bakers, apprentices, dogs, infants, and at least one neighbor who had already been awake for an hour, worrying about flour prices. In a narrow house beside a workshop, a child covers both ears and curls beneath a blanket. The rest of the family rises. The child does not. The bell is not merely loud. It seems to fill the entire room, the walls, the bed, and the body inside it. No one in that household has heard the word autism. No physician has a checklist. No teacher has received training in developmental differences. There is no clinic to visit and no specialist waiting in the next town. Yet the child's experience is real. The sound hurts. The morning routine matters. The familiar place at the table matters. The order in which clothes are put on matters. A sudden visitor, a changed meal, or a task given without warning can turn an ordinary day into something bewildering. The family has its own explanations. One relative says the child is sensitive. Another says stubborn. A grandmother notices that the child remembers every animal in the village and can identify which cow belongs to which household from a distance. The father worries about speech. The mother has already learned that questions work better when they are short, and that the child answers more easily while sorting wool than while being watched by a room full of adults. Nobody names the pattern. They simply live with it. This is where any honest journey into autism in the Middle Ages must begin. Not with a famous monk, an eccentric king, or an attempt to diagnose a long-dead genius. From 3 dramatic anecdotes, it begins with a simple biological fact and an equally important historical warning. Autism is a lifelong neurodevelopmental condition. Human brains did not begin developing in varied ways only after modern doctors created a diagnosis. Autistic people almost certainly lived in medieval societies, just as they lived before and after them. But identifying particular individuals across centuries is another matter entirely. A diagnosis today depends on much more than noticing that someone liked solitude, followed routines, or became absorbed in a subject. Clinicians look for a broad developmental pattern involving social communication, restricted or repetitive behavior, focused interests, sensory differences, and the way these traits affect daily life. They consider childhood history, current behavior, context, support needs, language, learning, and other possible explanations. Even with living people, trained professionals need time and detailed information. A chronicler writing a paragraph about an unusual monk is not the medieval equivalent of a clinical assessment, no matter how enthusiastically the internet may treat it. This does not make the historical question meaningless. It makes the question more interesting. Instead of asking which famous medieval people can be claimed for autism, we can ask how people with autistic traits might have experienced medieval environments. We can examine what families noticed, which forms of work rewarded precision, how religious communities interpreted difference, what happened to people who needed extensive support, and why some lives entered written records while most disappeared without leaving a name. The answer will not be a simple story of persecution, nor a comforting story in which every unusual person found the perfect monastery and spent a peaceful life illuminating manuscripts. Medieval Europe was too large, too varied, and too contradictory for either version. A person could be protected by family in one village and mocked in the next. A quiet craftsman could be valued for exceptional work, while a child with no reliable speech might be treated with fear or pity. Wealth could purchase privacy and assistance. Poverty could turn a manageable difference into a crisis. Religion could provide belonging, but it could also provide frightening explanations. Even the word medieval hides enormous diversity. A farming household in northern England did not live like a merchant family in Venice. A monastery in the 12th century did not operate exactly like one in the 15th. Christian Western Europe was not the entire medieval world. Byzantine cities, Jewish communities, Islamic societies, and countless local cultures had different institutions, languages, medical traditions, and ideas about the mind. Any single portrait must therefore remain modest. The goal is not to describe one universal medieval experience. There was no such thing. Still, one conclusion is difficult to avoid. The full variety of human minds was present. Somewhere, a child may have repeated the same phrase because it felt calming. Somewhere, an adult may have understood tools more easily than conversation. Somewhere, a person may have been overwhelmed by bells, crowds, smoke, rough clothing, or the unpredictable touch of strangers. Somewhere else, an individual may have required lifelong help with eating, safety, communication, or daily care. These people were not modern visitors, misplaced in the past. They belonged to their own communities, even when those communities struggled to understand them, to see why their lives are so difficult to recover. Consider what medieval writers usually thought worth recording. Chronicles celebrated wars, rulers, miracles, famines, noble marriages, disputed inheritances, and the occasional comet that seemed too important to ignore. Monastic documents recorded property, donations, appointments, and religious events. Courts recorded conflicts because peaceful households rarely generated useful paperwork. Estate accounts counted grain and wages. Medical manuscripts discussed theories and remedies, often for educated readers. None of these sources was designed to preserve the daily inner life of an ordinary child who hated crowded markets. The people most likely to leave personal writing were wealthy, educated, clerical, or unusually prominent. Most medieval Europeans could not write a diary, and even if they could, parchment was far too expensive to waste on an entry explaining that the midday bell had been unbearable again. Spoken memories vanished. Household adaptations were not recorded because they seemed ordinary. A mother who arranged chores around a child's needs did not submit a report to future historians. She simply tried to get through the day. The silence of the records creates a trap. We may notice eccentric scholars because scholars wrote about scholars. We may notice hermits because religious communities preserved stories about holy solitude. We rarely notice people whose differences were managed quietly within families. This can make historical autism look far more intellectual, male, religious, and talented than autism actually is. It can also erase people who had intellectual disabilities, epilepsy, limited speech, or major support needs because their voices were least likely to reach the page. Another trap comes from language. Medieval terms do not map neatly onto modern diagnoses. Words translated as foolish, simple, mad, innocent, possessed, mute, or witless could refer to many different conditions, social judgments, legal categories, or temporary states. A person described as simple might have had an intellectual disability, little education, a speech difference, or merely a reputation for honesty. Someone called mad might have experienced psychosis, severe mood disturbance, brain injury, epilepsy, delirium, or behavior that offended local expectations. Translation makes the uncertainty even greater. The Latin word idiota, for example, could sometimes refer to a person considered incapable of managing affairs. But in other contexts, it simply meant uneducated or unlearned. A modern reader sees a familiar-looking word and assumes a familiar meaning. That is how history quietly turns into fiction. Medieval people created categories, but their categories served medieval purposes. A court wanted to know whether someone could control land. A church court might care whether a person could understand marriage consent. A household wanted to know whether a member could work, inherit, or remain safe. None was asking whether diagnostic criteria for autism were present. This is why retrospective diagnosis is so tempting and so unreliable. A famous individual is described as socially awkward, deeply focused, repetitive, blunt, and uncomfortable in crowds. The pattern seems obvious. Then, another explanation appears. Perhaps the person was physically ill, traumatized, intensely devout, politically cautious, deaf, depressed, or simply represented unfairly by an enemy. Perhaps the anecdotes were written long after death. Perhaps the behavior was literary symbolism rather than observation. Perhaps the person truly was autistic. The evidence usually cannot decide. A responsible historian can say that a description resembles traits associated with autism. A responsible historian cannot turn resemblance into certainty. The difference may sound small, but it protects both history and autistic people. Autism is not a collection of charming eccentricities attached to brilliant men. It includes people with many kinds of abilities and many levels of support need. Reducing it to solitary scholarship and impressive memory creates a flattering myth that excludes much of the spectrum. The modern idea of a spectrum is essential here. Some autistic people speak fluently and live independently. Others communicate without speech, need help throughout the day, or have additional intellectual and physical disabilities. Many fall somewhere between these simplified extremes. Abilities can also vary by situation. A person who discusses a favorite subject with extraordinary precision may be unable to speak during sensory overload. Someone who manages familiar work independently may need considerable help when routines collapse. Medieval observers might have interpreted these differences as inconsistency, willfulness, weakness, holiness, or mystery. The fact that autism is strongly influenced by genetics makes its historical presence highly plausible. Families in medieval villages inherited the same human biology that families inherit now. Genes were not waiting for electricity, industrial cities, vaccines, or modern parenting before they began affecting brain development. Environmental conditions could shape health, survival, and how traits appeared, but they did not create the entire phenomenon from nothing. The diagnosis is modern. The underlying neurodevelopmental diversity is not. At the same time, prevalence cannot simply be projected backward with mathematical confidence. Medieval populations experienced high infant mortality, infectious disease, malnutrition, birth complications, and limited medical care. Some children who would survive today did not survive then. Other conditions could imitate or intensify autistic-like behavior. Hearing loss after infection could affect speech and social interaction. Brain injury could alter development. Severe deprivation could change behavior. Epilepsy, which is more common among autistic people, carried its own risks and interpretations. The medieval population was neurologically diverse, but the exact pattern cannot be reconstructed from modern statistics. To understand how an autistic child might have lived, the household matters more than the physician. Most children grew within dense networks of parents, siblings, grandparents, servants, apprentices, neighbors, and godparents. Life was communal. Privacy was limited. The household was a workplace as much as a home. Food preparation, textile production, animal care, storage, repairs, and childcare happened in overlapping spaces. A child was rarely separated from adult work by a carefully designed playroom. The medieval playroom was usually wherever adults were trying not to step on you. Families learned children through observation. They noticed who spoke early, who walked late, who feared strangers, who became calm around animals, who resisted certain foods, and who could not be trusted near the cooking fire. They did not have developmental screening, but they had daily exposure. A parent might not explain why a child rocked, hummed, repeated movements, or avoided eye contact. The parent could still discover what reduced distress. Practical adaptation did not require modern theory. A family might give predictable chores to a child who disliked sudden change. A sibling might speak on behalf of someone who struggled with strangers. A grandmother might protect a grandchild from teasing. A father might bring a child into the same workshop every day because familiar tools produced calm. These adjustments would not be called accommodations. They would be called knowing your family. The closeness of household life could be supportive, but it could also be exhausting. Noise had few boundaries. Babies cried beside sleeping adults. Animals moved through yards, and sometimes houses. Tools struck wood and metal. Smoke irritated eyes. Clothing could be rough. Strong smells came from tanning, dyeing, cooking, waste, livestock, and bodies living without modern plumbing. A person with sensory sensitivities had no quiet car, noise-canceling headphones, soft tagless clothing, or private bedroom waiting nearby. There were quieter places, but reaching them depended on circumstance. A field at dawn, a church after the crowd left, a storeroom, a garden, a riverside, or the edge of a workshop might offer relief. Families could notice that someone recovered better outside the main room. Yet solitude also had social meaning. A child who repeatedly disappeared from company might be considered disobedient or odd. The same behavior could be tolerated when the reason seemed useful, such as guarding sheep, gathering herbs, or performing a task away from crowds. Childhood expectations were different from modern ones. Children played, formed friendships, told stories, and received affection, but they also joined work early. The exact age and responsibility varied by class and region. A young child might carry messages, scare birds from crops, gather kindling, watch animals, spin simple thread, or help with food preparation. As skills increased, duties became more serious. There was little formal distinction between learning and contributing. Apprenticeship often began in adolescence, and some children left home to live with another household. For an autistic child, this system could help or harm. Learning through repeated observation might suit someone who preferred concrete routines. A child who struggled with abstract verbal instruction might master a task by watching it performed hundreds of times. On the other hand, harsh correction, unpredictable masters, crowded workshops, and pressure to imitate social behavior could be deeply distressing. A successful placement depended less on the trade itself than on the people teaching it. Modern stories sometimes imagine that medieval society accepted anyone who was useful. Usefulness certainly mattered, but usefulness was not a guarantee of kindness. Children were punished. Apprentices could be beaten. Servants could be exploited. A child who did not respond to instructions might be labeled lazy, even when language processing was the real problem. A child overwhelmed by noise might be accused of refusing work. A meltdown could be treated as a tantrum, moral failure, or deliberate defiance. The concept of a meltdown would have been absent, but the event would not. Picture a crowded market day. Bells ring. Animals pull against ropes. Sellers shout. Smoke drifts from food stalls. Strangers press past. A child has been holding together for an hour because the family needs grain. Then someone grabs the child's shoulder unexpectedly. The child screams, strikes out, drops to the ground, or runs. Every person nearby sees behavior. Almost nobody sees the accumulation that produced it. The family response might range from punishment to protection. A patient relative could recognize the warning signs and leave early next time. An impatient adult might decide the child needed stricter discipline. Both responses have existed in every century. The difference is that medieval families had fewer explanations and fewer external supports. There was no school psychologist to suggest that the market itself was the problem. Wisdom depended on experience, affection, and luck. Communication differences would have shaped life profoundly. Some autistic people use speech in unusual ways. They may repeat phrases, speak formally, interpret language literally, miss indirect hints, or talk at length about focused interests. Others use few spoken words, or none. Medieval society was highly verbal, but it was also highly practical and visual. Work could be demonstrated. Gestures carried meaning. Routine created context. A person who communicated poorly with strangers might function well among people who had known them since birth. A non-speaking child was not necessarily seen as lacking thought, but the danger of that assumption was real. Medieval writers often linked speech with reason because educated culture valued rhetoric, debate, confession, and legal testimony. Someone unable to answer in expected ways could be judged incapable, yet families frequently learned private systems of signs, sounds, expressions, and habits. Human beings have always communicated before experts arrived to classify how. Deafness complicates the picture. A deaf child who did not develop spoken language might resemble an autistic child in a brief written description. So might a child with oral motor difficulties, intellectual disability, trauma, or selective mutism. Without hearing tests or developmental histories, modern diagnosis is impossible. The overlap teaches caution. Silence is not a diagnosis. Neither is solitude. Neither is exceptional memory. Autism is a pattern across development, not a single striking trait. Language itself could become a refuge. Some autistic people find comfort in repeated words, familiar stories, or memorized passages. Medieval religious culture was filled with repetition. Prayers returned daily. Psalms were sung in established forms. Stories followed the calendar. A child who loved exact verbal patterns might memorize with unusual ease. Another might find chanting easier than spontaneous conversation because the words were already known and the social rules were clear. But again, the same setting could overwhelm. Church bells could hurt. Incense could be unbearable. A packed nave on a feast day could combine echo, touch, smell, heat, and unpredictability. The child who repeated prayers beautifully at home might collapse in public worship. Medieval observers could interpret this as contradiction. Modern understanding recognizes that ability depends heavily on environment. The central lesson is already emerging. An autistic person in the Middle Ages would not simply have been a modern autistic person minus a diagnosis. The underlying neurodevelopmental traits may have been similar, but the surrounding world changed what those traits meant. A preference for routine could blend into agricultural life. Sensory sensitivity could become disabling in a crowded workshop. Deep focus could lead to mastery or to isolation if the interest had no recognized use. Limited speech could be supported by family or become dangerous in law and religion. The person and the environment met each other every day. Sometimes the fit was good, sometimes it was terrible. Usually it was mixed. That is not a uniquely medieval conclusion. It remains true now. Sensory experience offers one of the clearest examples of that meeting between person and environment. Autistic people often process sound, touch, light, smell, taste, movement, temperature, or pain differently. Some sensations arrive with unusual force, others barely register. A person may seek pressure, rhythm, motion, or repeated sound. Another may avoid them. Medieval life supplied intense sensations in abundance, usually without asking permission first. The soundscape alone could be demanding. Church bells marked prayer, danger, curfew, celebration, fire, death, and public announcements. Metalworkers hammered, millstones ground, carts rattled over uneven streets. Animals complained with the confidence of creatures who had never once considered lowering their voices. Markets depended on shouting because a merchant, whispering politely about excellent onions, rarely defeated the merchant beside him, announcing excellent onions to the entire county. In rural life, the noise was different, but not necessarily gentle. Roosters began before dawn. Dogs barked at travelers. Tools struck soil and timber. Harvest work gathered many bodies into one place. Storms hit roofs made from thatch, wood, tile, or stone. A person sensitive to sudden sound could not control these conditions, but familiarity might help. The same bell at the same hour could become predictable. An unexpected bell at midnight meant something was wrong, and distress would hardly be unusual then. Touch was equally unavoidable. Clothing was layered and often made from wool or linen. Quality varied enormously. Fine linen could be comfortable. Coarse cloth, stiff seams, sweat, insects, dampness, and repeated repairs could create constant irritation. People owned fewer garments than modern consumers, so refusing one tunic because it felt unbearable was not easily solved by opening another drawer. The drawer itself may have contained exactly one alternative and several objects that belonged to someone else. Food texture could create conflict. Medieval diets were not uniform, but many households relied on bread, pottage, grains, legumes, dairy, vegetables, fish, and seasonal meat. Consistency changed from batch to batch. Bread might be coarse. Stew might contain unexpected bones, husks, or unfamiliar vegetables. Preservation altered texture and smell. A person with a restricted diet could be seen as difficult when food security was already fragile. During shortage, preference became almost impossible to honor. Yet some households offered repetitive meals that may have felt reassuring. The same grain porridge, the same bread, the same cheese, and the same cooking method could return for days. Modern visitors might find the menu monotonous. A person who preferred predictability might consider it one of the day's more civilized features. The difficulty came when seasons changed or stores failed. The safe food available in autumn might disappear by late winter, and no medieval parent could order a replacement from another province before supper. Smell filled nearly every environment. Wood smoke, tallow candles, incense, animals, manure, leather, fish, dye, fermentation, herbs, bodies, and waste all competed for attention. Some smells announced danger, such as burning thatch or spoiled food. Others were simply part of life. An autistic person who reacted strongly might avoid certain streets or trades. A family could learn that the tannery caused distress without understanding sensory processing. They only needed a nose and a willingness to believe the person standing beside them. Light also shaped behavior. Interiors were darker than modern rooms. Daylight entered through doors, shutters, small windows, or expensive glass. Fire and candles flickered. For someone sensitive to bright sunlight, dim buildings might provide relief. For someone who needed clear visual information, shadows could increase uncertainty. Night removed many social demands, but introduced its own dangers. The modern assumption that medieval sensory life was universally harsher is too simple. Some features were overwhelming. Others may have been calmer than fluorescent offices, traffic, public address systems, and glowing screens. Crowds were not constant everywhere. A remote farm, a shepherd's route, a quiet cloister, or a small village could offer long periods of relative calm. Cities, pilgrimage sites, ports, fairs, churches, and noble households could be intensely crowded. Location mattered. So did class. A wealthy person might withdraw to a private chamber. A servant could not. A monk might have an assigned place in choir. A beggar depended on public space. Sensory regulation is much easier when a person controls where they go and control was distributed very unequally. Pain creates another uncertainty. Some autistic people experience pain or internal bodily signals differently. A person may not notice hunger, injury, heat, cold, or illness until it becomes severe. Another may feel ordinary discomfort with great intensity. Medieval medicine relied heavily on what patients and families observed. If someone could not describe symptoms in expected language, illness might be missed. A wound unnoticed during work could become infected. A person who reacted strongly to minor touch might be accused of exaggeration, while a serious internal problem remained silent. Families often became interpreters. They knew that a particular sound meant stomach pain, that withdrawal meant fever, or that sudden agitation came before a seizure. This knowledge could be more useful than formal theory. Medieval physicians wrote sophisticated texts, but many people never saw a university-trained doctor. Care began at home with people who recognized changes. The parent who knew a child well had information no visiting healer could replace. Routine may have provided another kind of support. Medieval life is often described as repetitive, and much of it was. Seasons organized farming, bells organized religious communities, markets met on established days, feast days, and fast days returned each year. Crafts followed sequences learned through apprenticeship. Households repeated tasks because forgetting to feed animals or cover grain had consequences far more serious than an untidy calendar. For someone who preferred predictability, repetition could reduce uncertainty. The cow waited in the same stall. The loom required the same opening movements. The baker shaped dough before sunrise. The monastery bell announced what came next. Repetition did not eliminate difficulty, but it made the world legible. A task learned thoroughly could be completed without negotiating new social rules every few minutes. Modern people sometimes romanticize this structure. Medieval routines were not personal wellness plans. They existed because labor, religion, daylight, and survival demanded them. The individual had limited choice. A person could not ask the harvest to arrive more gradually because change felt overwhelming. Work intensified when crops were ready. Religious festivals transformed quiet streets into crowds. A lord's order, a military raid, a death, or a fire could shatter routine without warning. Disaster was especially dangerous for people who relied on familiar patterns. War displaced households. Famine changed food and work. Epidemic removed caregivers. A monastery might be reformed under a stricter superior. A child could be sent into service. A marriage could move a young woman to an unfamiliar home where every sound, expectation, and relationship changed at once. Medieval stability was real, but it was fragile. Within ordinary times, habit carried social approval. Tradition was treated seriously. A person who followed established procedures exactly might be praised as dependable. A worker who resisted innovation could appear conservative rather than disabled. This is an important reminder that traits become visible partly because of cultural expectations. Modern workplaces reward rapid switching, constant communication, networking, flexible schedules, and cheerful adaptation to software updates that arrive precisely when everyone has learned the previous version. Medieval tasks often rewarded different abilities. That does not mean medieval work was naturally friendly to autistic people. Many jobs required teamwork, negotiation, physical endurance, customer interaction, travel, and submission to authority. Apprentices lived under masters who controlled work and discipline. Guilds valued reputation and sociability. Markets required bargaining. Agricultural labor depended on cooperation. A person who missed signals, spoke bluntly, or became overwhelmed could struggle even while producing excellent work. The idea that every autistic person has a special talent perfectly suited to a craft is another comforting myth. Some do possess exceptional abilities. Many do not. Autism can involve uneven skills rather than universal brilliance. A person might notice tiny errors but have difficulty planning a sequence. Another might remember details, yet struggle with motor coordination. Someone could love patterns but be unable to tolerate the noise of a workshop. A person with high support needs might never become economically independent in a society that measured survival through labor. Still, certain occupations could create a good fit for certain individuals. Textile work depended on repeated movement, pattern recognition, touch, counting, and long attention. Metalwork required knowledge of heat, timing, materials, and sequence. Woodworking depended on measurement and practiced hands. Manuscript production included ruling pages, mixing ink, preparing parchment, copying text, correcting errors, and decorating initials. Estate administration required tracking rents, stores, animals, wages, and obligations. Mastery came through repetition. An apprentice did not attend a brief seminar and emerge certified by afternoon. Skills developed across years. The learner watched, imitated, practiced, failed, received correction, and practiced again. For someone who enjoyed deep learning, this could be satisfying. For someone who needed explicit instruction, the quality of the master mattered. Medieval teaching often assumed that observation was enough. When it was not, the apprentice might be blamed. Workshops were social worlds as well as production sites. Masters, spouses, children, apprentices, servants, customers, and suppliers moved through them. A worker needed to understand hierarchy. Some tasks were assigned without explanation. Humor could be rough. Mistakes affected valuable materials. A person who preferred direct language might appreciate clear orders, but struggle with sarcasm or implied criticism. The phrase, "everyone knows what I meant," has probably caused trouble for as long as anyone has meant anything. Guild structures could offer security to established members. They regulated training, quality, prices, charity, funerals, and support for widows or sick members. They could also exclude outsiders. A person who completed apprenticeship and gained a valued reputation might receive tolerance for eccentricity. A person unable to enter the system could remain vulnerable. Competence helped, but belonging depended on relationships, money, citizenship, gender, and local rules. The historical record preserves extraordinary objects while hiding the minds that made them. A carved choir stall, a precisely fitted roof, a repeated geometric border, or a page filled with tiny script may show patience and skill. It cannot diagnose the maker. The work may have involved many hands. The pattern may have been standard practice. Precision can come from training, pride, pressure, or temperament. To look at a cathedral and declare it evidence of autism would be to replace history with admiration dressed as science. What the objects do prove is that medieval societies created roles requiring sustained attention. Autistic individuals could have participated in those roles. Some may have become respected specialists. Others may have struggled within the same environments. The difference depended on personal traits, support, health, and social opportunity. There was no medieval employment program designed around neurodiversity. There were simply jobs, households, institutions, and people trying to fit one another with mixed success. Monasteries are often presented as the ideal historical refuge. The attraction is understandable. Monastic rules created schedules. Bells divided the day. Repeated prayer provided structure. Silence reduced some social demands. Reading, copying, gardening, cooking, music, accounting, and craft work offered specialized tasks. A person drawn to routine, contemplation, or focused study might find such a life meaningful. But a monastery was not a quiet apartment with optional communal activities. It was a disciplined community. Members ate together, prayed together, worked under authority, obeyed rules, and lived close to others. Bells rang at night. Chant echoed through stone. Clothing could be uncomfortable. Personal preference was often subordinated to communal order. A monk who needed routine might appreciate the schedule and still find the sensory and social environment exhausting. Admission was also limited. Families sometimes offered children to religious houses, and adults entered for spiritual, social, political, or economic reasons. Wealthy families could provide donations. Poor applicants faced different barriers. Physical or mental conditions might affect whether a community believed someone could follow the rule. A monastery had duties to care for sick members, but it also depended on members contributing to collective life. Some people with autistic traits may have found a good fit. A monk who preferred predictable prayer, limited travel, and detailed scholarship could thrive. A nun with strong memory and devotion to music might become essential to the liturgy. A lay brother who disliked academic debate might work in gardens, kitchens, workshops, or farms. Monastic communities contained many types of labor, not only scribes bending beautifully over illuminated books while soft music played from nowhere. The scriptorium itself has been romanticized. Copying could be cold, painful, tiring work. Eyes strained in poor light, hands cramped. Materials were expensive. Silence was not guaranteed. Some monasteries produced few books, and professional urban workshops increasingly handled manuscripts in later centuries. Even when a person loved text, the body still had opinions about sitting in one position for hours. Religious repetition could regulate emotion. Familiar prayers, chant, beads, gestures, and sequences gave predictable form to attention. Repeated movement or sound may have served autistic people as it serves some today, offering calm, focus, or expression. Yet medieval writers would interpret the practice through devotion, not neurology. That interpretation could be supportive if the behavior matched approved worship. It could become suspicious if repetition occurred outside accepted forms. A person who repeated a prayer was pious. A person who repeated an unusual phrase might be mocked. A visionary who communicated within recognized theological language could attract followers. Another person with confusing speech might be feared. Institutions did not respond to traits in isolation. They responded to meaning. The same outward behavior changed status depending on who performed it, where, and under whose authority. Hermits and anchorites offered a more solitary religious path. Some withdrew to remote places. Others lived in cells attached to churches, maintaining controlled contact through windows. Their lives could include strict routine, prayer, reading, manual work, and counsel to visitors. Solitude had cultural legitimacy when framed as devotion. This gave some people a recognized way to live apart from ordinary social demands. It is tempting to label every famous recluse autistic. The temptation should be resisted. Solitude can arise from faith, trauma, grief, political withdrawal, physical illness, personality, or deliberate ascetic practice. Medieval religious culture encouraged behaviors that resemble autistic traits without having the same cause. A person who chose silence after years of public life is not equivalent to a child with lifelong communication differences. The more useful conclusion is environmental. Medieval Christianity created valued roles in which silence, repetition, narrow focus, and distance from ordinary society could be interpreted positively. Some autistic people may have benefited. Others could not access those roles. A person needing constant care was unlikely to become an independent hermit. Despite modern stories that send every unusual medieval person conveniently into the woods, convents deserve equal attention because historical discussions often imagine autism through male scholars. Women and girls were present across the spectrum. but their traces are even harder to find. A convent could provide education, routine, community, music, administration, textile work, and a life outside marriage. For a woman whose social differences made courtship or household management difficult, religious life might offer another path. For another, communal discipline could be oppressive. Some nuns became writers, musicians, healers, estate managers, and intellectual authorities. Their achievements show what structured opportunity could make possible. They do not allow diagnosis. A woman who wrote with extraordinary intensity may have been autistic or not. The evidence can support discussion of traits and environments, not possession of her identity centuries later. Schools and universities created another specialized world. Cathedral schools, monastic schools, urban schools, and later universities trained clerics, lawyers, physicians, administrators, and scholars. Education relied heavily on memory, oral disputation, commentary, and repetition. Students listened, copied, recited, argued, and absorbed authoritative texts. A learner with strong memory could excel. A learner who struggled with rapid verbal exchange could find disputation brutal. The university classroom was not a peaceful library. Lessons could be crowded and noisy. Students lived communally. Academic conflict was intense. Teachers expected public response. Latin shaped education across regions, requiring learners to operate in a language different from everyday speech. A student fascinated by logic might flourish intellectually while failing socially. Another might possess great knowledge, but be unable to navigate patronage, debate, or institutional politics. Medieval anecdotes about absent-minded scholars should be treated as literary humor, not case reports. The professor who forgets dinner because he is contemplating universals belongs to a long comic tradition. Modern universities still tell similar stories because intellectual concentration is easy to exaggerate. The stereotype shows that contemporaries recognized extreme absorption. It does not show why any individual behaved that way. Books themselves could provide stability. Text followed a fixed order. A difficult passage remained in place, while human conversation moved unpredictably. Lists, calendars, genealogies, commentaries, and classifications offered systems. Some autistic people might have found such structures compelling. Others had no access to literacy. We must not let the surviving world of educated men define the entire medieval spectrum. Most autistic people, like most people in general, were not scholars. They were born into farms, workshops, kitchens, ports, estates, camps, and streets. Their lives depended less on intellectual potential than on family resources and social fit. The brilliant monk makes an appealing story. The adult who needed help dressing could not tolerate common foods, and communicated through gesture is equally important, even though no chronicler thought to preserve that life. That imbalance leads toward the most difficult part of the story. Medieval societies could reward unusual concentration, but they offered no guaranteed support for disability. When traits aligned with valued work, difference might become expertise. When needs exceeded what a family could provide, the same society could become unforgiving. To understand historical autism, honestly, we must follow both paths. Women and girls are especially easy to lose. Modern research has shown that autistic traits can be overlooked when a person imitates expected social behavior, rehearses conversation, suppresses visible self-regulation, or builds an acceptable identity around intense effort. This is often called masking or camouflaging. Medieval societies imposed strong gendered expectations, which means a girl who learned to copy, obey, remain quiet, and conceal distress could pass through records almost invisibly. Silence in a boy might attract concern. Silence in a girl could be praised as modesty. A narrow interest in household textiles might look like diligence rather than unusual focus. Repeated practice of prayers, embroidery, food preparation, or music could fit approved feminine labor. A girl who avoided strangers might be described as well-guarded. Traits did not disappear. They were interpreted through gender. This did not make life easy. Masking requires attention and can be exhausting. A young woman might perform expected politeness throughout a market visit, then collapse in private where no chronicler could see. She might memorize social scripts for greeting elders, serving guests, or answering a prospective husband. Success would make her difference less visible, not less real. Marriage could bring sudden and permanent change. The timing and pattern of marriage varied widely by region and class. Many women did not marry in early adolescence, despite the legal minimums that appear so often in sensational accounts. Yet, whenever marriage occurred, it could move a woman into another household with unfamiliar people, routines, smells, duties, and rules. For someone who relied on predictability, the adjustment could be severe. A supportive spouse or older woman in the household might make adaptation possible. A hostile family could interpret distress as incompetence, disobedience, or bad character. The bride's ability to perform expected work mattered. So did fertility, family alliances, property, and reputation. Medieval marriage was not a private experiment in compatibility. It connected households, which meant differences quickly became public business. Widowhood could increase both vulnerability and control. Some widows managed property, trades, workshops, or estates with greater independence than married women. An autistic widow with strong practical skills might benefit from the ability to organize life on her own terms. Another, especially one needing support, could lose the person who translated the social world for her. The same legal status produced very different outcomes depending on money, kin, health, and local custom. Women with high support needs are almost absent from narrative records. Their care likely occurred mostly inside households, convents, charitable institutions, or informal networks. A family might protect a daughter throughout life. Siblings could inherit responsibility. Servants might provide daily assistance in wealthy homes. Poor families had fewer options, but lack of wealth did not mean lack of attachment. People shared food, space, work, and care because there was often no alternative. Modern autism discussions sometimes separate autistic people into the talented and the dependent, as if these categories never overlap. Real lives are more complicated. A person can possess excellent memory and still need help with hygiene. Someone can understand theology and become unable to speak under stress. Another can communicate without speech, show affection clearly, and require protection from danger. Medieval communities would have seen abilities in context rather than through standardized scores, though their judgments could still be unfair. Intellectual disability must be distinguished from autism, even though they can occur together. Some autistic people have intellectual disabilities. Many do not. Medieval legal and social categories often focused on whether a person could understand, remember, consent, manage property, or protect themselves from exploitation. Those categories were not autism diagnoses. A socially unusual person with ordinary reasoning might never attract legal attention. A person with significant cognitive disability might. Late medieval English law, for example, developed procedures for judging mental competence in cases involving land and guardianship. Officials might ask whether a person knew family relationships, money, seasons, common tasks, or the value of property. The process was inconsistent and shaped by financial interests. If land was involved, relatives and authorities suddenly developed an impressive enthusiasm for defining exactly how capable the owner happened to be. Terms translated as natural fool or idiot were used for people believed to have lifelong intellectual limitations. Another category applied to those thought to have lost reason later. These distinctions mattered because property control and guardianship could follow. They reveal that medieval officials recognized differences between lifelong and acquired conditions. They do not reveal modern diagnostic boundaries. An autistic adult could be misjudged in such an inquiry. Literal answers, unusual eye contact, delayed speech, anxiety before strangers, or inability to perform on command might be mistaken for lack of understanding. A person who knew the family farm intimately could fail when questioned in an unfamiliar legal setting. This problem has not vanished from the world. Performance under examination is not the same as ability in daily life. The reverse was also possible. A person with fluent speech might be assumed competent despite major difficulties with judgment or exploitation. Social charm can conceal vulnerability. Medieval courts had no reliable method for separating communication style, knowledge, adaptive skill, and mental health. Their decisions depended on witnesses, custom, observation, and sometimes whoever stood to gain control of the estate. Consent created other questions. Christian marriage law emphasized the consent of the partners, at least in principle. A person needed sufficient understanding to enter a valid union. Courts therefore confronted cases involving speech, coercion, age, and mental capacity. Again, autism as a category did not exist. An autistic person who clearly expressed choice might marry. Someone unable to communicate in recognized ways could be denied agency, even if preference was present. Religious obligations also assumed certain abilities. Confession depended on communication and moral understanding. Participation in sacraments raised questions about comprehension. Clergy could respond pastorally, rigidly, or somewhere in between. Medieval Christianity contained strong traditions of care for vulnerable people, but also intense concern with reason, sin, intention, and spiritual order. The person in front of the priest mattered, and so did the priest. This is where religious interpretation becomes especially complicated. Popular portrayals often claim that medieval people explained all unusual behavior as demonic possession. That is false. They had many explanations. Illness could be natural. Temperament could be shaped by bodily humors. A person might be foolish, melancholy, holy, sinful, injured, bewitched, grieving, intoxicated, epileptic, or simply strange. Spiritual and natural explanations could coexist rather than compete. A physician might recommend diet and herbs, while a priest offered prayer. A family might believe a child's condition came from birth, while still asking a saint for help. Medieval people did not divide medicine and religion into sealed, modern departments. They used whatever frameworks seemed available. If one remedy failed, another explanation gained attention. This approach was flexible, though not always safe. Autistic behavior could fit several interpretations. Withdrawal might resemble melancholy or devotion. Repetition could appear as habit, prayer, or compulsion. Limited speech could be attributed to physical impairment, intellectual limitation, fear, or divine mystery. Unusual sensory responses might simply be invisible to observers. A meltdown could be read as anger, madness, possession, pain, or bad discipline. Saints' lives contain descriptions of individuals who rejected social expectations, sought silence, endured sensations differently, or focused intensely on spiritual matters. These texts are not neutral biographies. They were written to teach, inspire, and demonstrate holiness. Authors shaped events into recognizable patterns. A saint who avoided company might symbolize rejection of worldly vanity. A child who refused ordinary food might symbolize miraculous devotion. Treating such literary motifs as clinical symptoms ignores why the texts were written. The same caution applies to holy fools. In Byzantine and later Eastern Christian traditions, some religious figures behaved publicly in ways that challenged social norms. Their apparent foolishness could conceal spiritual wisdom. They might speak bluntly, reject status, or perform shocking acts. These stories offer rich evidence about how societies could give religious meaning to unconventional behavior. They do not provide a list of autistic individuals. Changelings require even greater care. Folklore across parts of Europe told of infants or children stolen by supernatural beings and replaced with strange substitutes. Later commentators have connected changeling stories with autism, intellectual disability, illness, growth disorders, or developmental regression. The resemblance is possible in some tales, especially where a child changes behavior, stops speaking, cries constantly, eats unusually, or fails to develop as expected. But the claim is often made too confidently. Changeling traditions varied by place and period. Many surviving accounts are later than the medieval era. The English word itself became common after much of the Middle Ages. Stories could explain illness, disability, sudden loss of skills, unusual appearance, hunger, or family misfortune. They were not created as a single folk diagnosis for autism. The stories also carried danger. If caregivers believed the child before them was not truly human, abusive tests could follow. Later, European records describe exposure, beating, frightening rituals, and even killing linked to changeling beliefs. It would be comforting to place all such cruelty in an ignorant past, but the deeper lesson is about dehumanization. Once a person is described as an imposter rather than a child, violence becomes easier to justify. How common these practices were in medieval daily life is difficult to establish. Folklore records dramatic events because dramatic events are remembered. Most families with unusual children probably did not perform legendary tests. They fed, carried, protected, disciplined, worried about, and loved them. A frightening story should not be allowed to represent every household. Medieval theology could actually resist the most dangerous implications. Christian teaching insisted that baptized children possessed souls and belonged within moral community. Clergy sometimes condemned harmful superstition. Charity toward people who could not repay was treated as a religious duty. Yet theology could also reinforce ideas about sin, divine punishment, and spiritual threat. As always, the same tradition contained resources for compassion and exclusion. Care was rarely centralized. The modern image of disabled people immediately confined in institutions belongs more to later periods than to most of medieval Europe. Families and local communities provided the majority of daily support. Religious houses, hospitals, almshouses, fraternities, and charitable foundations added help, but their capacity was limited and their purposes varied. The medieval hospital was not simply an early version of a modern medical center. Many offered shelter, food, prayer, nursing, and hospitality to the poor, sick, aged, disabled, or traveling. Some specialized in particular conditions. Others served local communities or members of religious orders. Treatment might be present, but care and spiritual comfort were often central. An autistic person could enter such a setting for reasons unrelated to autism: poverty, illness, loss of family, epilepsy, injury, age, or inability to work might lead to charitable support. The institution would not identify sensory needs or communication style through a modern assessment. It might still provide regular meals, repeated prayer, a bed, and a stable routine. Depending on staff and conditions, that could be supportive or restrictive. Monasteries cared for their own sick members as part of communal obligation. Infirmaries offered rest, food, and nursing. Some religious communities maintained guest houses or distributed alms. A person with developmental disability might be supported as a dependent, servant, lay member, or recipient of charity. Records rarely describe emotional relationships, but care did not occur without human contact. Someone prepared food. Someone washed clothing. Someone noticed when the person was missing. Cities created civic and religious charities. Guilds supported sick members and families. Parishes organized assistance. Wealthy patrons funded beds or food. Begging also formed part of the economy of survival. Disability could make a person's need visible and, within Christian charity, deserving of alms. Yet dependence on public generosity exposed people to humiliation, exploitation, weather, and inconsistent support. Families remained the most important institution because they were present every day. A household with land, tools, and several working adults could absorb one member's reduced productivity more easily than a household near starvation. Economic pressure shaped tolerance. A person might be loved deeply and still be seen as a burden when every mouth required grain. Affection does not remove scarcity. Care work usually fell heavily on women. Mothers, sisters, wives, daughters, female servants, and religious women fed, cleaned, watched, and comforted people who needed help. Their labor appears only indirectly in records. An account might note food provided to a dependent without naming the person who prepared it. A will might leave money for care without describing years already given. Historical silence hides caregivers as thoroughly as it hides autistic people. Support could be reciprocal. An adult who needed help with negotiation might contribute through repetitive household work. A person unable to manage money might care for animals reliably. Someone with limited speech could participate in family life through gesture, presence, and familiar tasks. Dependence is rarely one-directional. Medieval households understood interdependence because nearly everyone relied on others for survival. The idea of independence itself was different. Few people lived as isolated economic individuals. Peasants needed neighbors at harvest. Merchants needed partners. Nobles needed servants. Monks needed communities. A modern observer might describe someone as dependent because they could not live alone, but living alone was neither expected nor desirable for most medieval people. The relevant question was whether a place existed within the household network. That place could be secure or precarious. When parents died, siblings married, or property changed hands, care arrangements could collapse. Wills sometimes attempted to protect vulnerable relatives through money, housing, or guardianship. Such documents show concern, but also fear. A parent knew that kindness could not be guaranteed after death. People with strong kin networks had better chances. Orphans, migrants, the poor, and socially isolated adults faced greater danger. A person who could not advocate effectively was vulnerable to theft, coercion, sexual abuse, forced labor, and neglect. Medieval law offered some protection, especially where property was involved. Protection of the person without property was less reliable. Enslaved and unfree people had even less control. Medieval Europe and the wider medieval world included slavery, serfdom, captivity, and coerced labor in various forms. An autistic enslaved person was not evaluated for suitable support. Value was measured through obedience and output. Difference could invite punishment. Skilled ability might improve treatment, but it did not create freedom. Class changed nearly every outcome. A noble child who disliked crowds could be given private space, tutors, servants, and protection. A poor child with the same sensitivities might sleep beside several relatives and work in noisy conditions. A wealthy adult who spoke bluntly might be called eccentric. A servant who spoke bluntly to a superior could be beaten or dismissed. The trait remained similar. power altered its consequences. This is why stories of successful specialists must be balanced with people whose needs were never turned into admired expertise. Some autistic individuals would have needed support that medieval communities could not provide consistently. Communication devices did not exist. Seizures lacked effective treatment. Dangerous wandering, self-injury, feeding difficulties, or severe sleep problems could exhaust families. A caregiver might respond with patience one day and desperation the next. There were no modern services to guarantee respite, education, occupational support, or protection. There were also no modern institutions separating disabled people from family on an industrial scale. The past was not simply better or worse. Its risks were arranged differently. A loving household could offer deep belonging. A hostile household could become a prison with no outside authority likely to intervene. Even positive religious care should not be romanticized. Charity could treat the recipient as an object through whom the giver earned spiritual merit. A person might receive food without voice or choice. Compassion and hierarchy often occupied the same room. Medieval society could affirm the duty to care while assuming that the cared-for person should remain obedient and grateful. Yet it would be equally misleading to portray medieval people as incapable of seeing personhood. Parents grieved disabled children. Communities remembered unusual members. Legal cases debated competence because individual rights and property mattered. Religious writers insisted on moral value. Archaeology shows bodies with long-term impairments who survived for years, which means someone provided food and protection. Survival itself can be evidence of care, though never proof that life was easy. For autistic people, belonging probably depended less on a society-wide attitude than on a handful of relationships. One patient parent, one sibling who understood gestures, one master willing to teach clearly, one abbess who recognized ability, one neighbor who intervened when others mocked. History usually records institutions, but daily survival often turns on individuals. It is easy to say that the Middle Ages misunderstood autism. That statement is true, but incomplete. Modern societies also misunderstand autism, even while possessing diagnostic manuals, neuroscience, advocacy, and first-person testimony. Knowledge does not automatically produce acceptance. Medieval people had less language, but some offered practical care. Modern people have more language, but can still punish behavior they do not understand. The comparison should not flatter either era. It should make the central issue visible. A person experiences the world in a particular way. The community decides whether that experience will be met with curiosity, adjustment, neglect, or force. The vocabulary changes. The moral choice remains surprisingly familiar. Curiosity was not always the response. Medieval communities could be intimate, supportive, and brutally observant. Everyone knew who arrived late to church, whose fence remained broken, which apprentice spoke strangely, and which family member behaved differently in public. Gossip moved without paper, horse, or official seal. It required only two people, a doorway, and the sincere belief that the conversation was none of their business. For an autistic person, constant observation could increase pressure to conform. Unusual movement, repeated speech, flat expression, intense enthusiasm, or avoidance of eye contact might attract nicknames. Nicknames were common and often direct. They identified appearance, occupation, place of origin, personality, or impairment, with a bluntness modern workplaces would wisely avoid. A nickname could signal affection, social acceptance, ridicule, or all three at once. Humor helped communities manage difference, but humor also hurt. A valued craftsman might be teased for exact habits while remaining included. A child could be mocked until leaving the group entirely. A court entertainer with intellectual disability might gain food, protection, and unusual permission to speak honestly, yet still be valued partly as an object of amusement. Inclusion built on laughter is unstable when the person cannot control the joke. Bullying rarely appears in records unless it caused injury or legal conflict. Ordinary cruelty leaves little paperwork. Children excluded one another. Apprentices tested newcomers. Servants lived within hierarchies where retaliation was difficult. An autistic person who misunderstood teasing or reacted intensely could become an easy target. The visible reaction rewarded the aggressor. That pattern is painfully recognizable across centuries. Adults could also exploit trust. A literal person might believe promises others recognized as deceptive. Someone eager for acceptance could be manipulated into theft, sexual situations, false testimony, or dangerous work. A person unable to read social motives might be called foolish after being deceived, as though exploitation proved a defect in the victim rather than the exploiter. Communities also protected their own. Neighbors intervened in disputes. Guilds disciplined members. Parish relationships created obligations. A well-known vulnerable adult might move through familiar streets under many watchful eyes. The same lack of privacy that enabled gossip could provide safety. A stranger leading the person away might be questioned immediately. Social surveillance was unpleasant until it prevented harm. Reputation mattered enormously. Once a person became known as honest, skilled, harmless, holy, troublesome, or strange, that label shaped future interpretation. A blunt statement from a respected artisan could be accepted as characteristic. The same words from a disliked outsider could be treated as insult. Autistic traits were filtered through reputation before anyone considered the situation itself. This could create a stable social identity. The quiet shepherd, the meticulous clerk, the woman who remembered every birth, or the brother who preferred the garden, might occupy a recognized place. People did not need a diagnostic explanation to develop expectations. Predictability worked both ways. The autistic person learned the village, and the village learned the person. Movement disrupted that balance. Medieval people traveled more than old stereotypes suggest. Pilgrims, students, soldiers, merchants, servants, craftspeople, clergy, and migrants crossed regions. Young people entered service in unfamiliar households. An autistic person functioning well at home could struggle severely after relocation. Familiar communication systems disappeared. New listeners interpreted behavior without years of context. A traveler also faced sensory uncertainty. Inns were crowded. Roads changed. Food varied. Animals, weather, and strangers made schedules unreliable. Written signs were limited. Questions required interaction. For someone who depended on routine or familiar support, travel could be disabling even when physical endurance was strong. A pilgrimage praised as spiritually transformative for one person might be a sustained sensory emergency for another. Urban life offered both danger and opportunity. Towns concentrated noise, smell, crowding, commerce, and social complexity. They also concentrated specialized work. Religious houses, charities, schools, and communities of strangers who cared less about a person's childhood reputation. A person considered odd in a village might become simply another artisan in a district full of people occupied with their own problems. Cities allowed narrower expertise. A rural household needed broad competence because every member performed many tasks. An urban workshop could specialize in buckles, parchment, account keeping, dye, glass, locks, or musical instruments. A person deeply interested in one process might find a sustainable role. The same specialization could create dependence on markets and employers. Losing a workshop position meant losing the structure that made life manageable. Rural environments offered familiarity, outdoor space, and repeated seasonal tasks. They also demanded flexibility across weather, animals, harvests, and household emergencies. The popular image of a peaceful farm ignores the unpredictability of living creatures. Cows do not follow visual schedules. Sheep treat fences as invitations to conduct research. Weather remains the oldest manager to reject all requests for reasonable accommodation. Social expectations varied by class and occupation. A noble household required ceremony, clothing rules, public appearances, and layered communication. A merchant household required calculation, negotiation, correspondence, and risk. A peasant household required physical labor and cooperation. A religious household required obedience and communal ritual. No setting was automatically easy. Each offered different possible points of fit. Political power could conceal difference. A ruler surrounded by servants might arrange life according to personal preference. Court officials could interpret bluntness as authority, isolation as dignity, and rigid habits as royal protocol. The same behavior in a poor subject might be punished. This makes famous people especially dangerous candidates for retrospective diagnosis. Power changes how behavior is described. Enemies also shape records. A chronicler hostile to a ruler might depict reserve as cruelty, hesitation as stupidity, intense interest as obsession, or unusual speech as madness. Supporters might turn the same traits into wisdom and discipline. Modern readers then select whichever description fits the diagnosis they already want. The method proves more about the reader than the historical person. Crisis stripped away many forms of protection. Harvest failure reduced food. War disrupted households. Epidemic killed caregivers. Fire destroyed familiar spaces. Floods, cold, and animal disease created sudden change. People who relied on support networks were especially vulnerable when those networks broke. The Great Plague of the 14th century provides the most dramatic example, though epidemics struck throughout the medieval period. In affected regions, illness could remove parents, siblings, priests, masters, and neighbors within weeks. Work routines collapsed. Homes changed ownership. Survivors moved. Burial, fear, and labor shortages transformed communities. An autistic person who depended on one trusted caregiver might lose that person without any replacement who understood their communication. Sensory distress during epidemic would be difficult to separate from universal terror. Bells rang for death. Crowds fled or gathered. Familiar rituals changed under pressure. Illness brought pain, fever, and confusion. A person who reacted differently might receive less patience because everyone else was exhausted. Crisis does not create prejudice from nothing, but it makes compassion more expensive. The aftermath could also open unexpected roles. Labor shortages increased bargaining power for some workers. People moved into new occupations. Servants sought better terms. Land became available. An autistic survivor with useful skills might gain opportunity. Another might be displaced beyond the ability to recover. Historical change never distributes its effects evenly. Famine created harsher limits. Restricted eating, already difficult in ordinary life, became dangerous when only a few foods remained. A person unable to tolerate available texture might weaken rapidly. Families forced to ration could interpret refusal as ingratitude. The person might be physically unable to eat and yet appear to be choosing hunger. Without knowledge of sensory-based feeding difficulties, conflict could become severe. War introduced forced movement, violence, noise, and loss of routine. Soldiers passed through communities. Fortifications changed work. Refugees crowded safer areas. Some autistic men may have entered military service, where routine and clear hierarchy could help, but sensory intensity and sudden commands could overwhelm. Others would have been excluded by health or social difficulties. No single military profile applies. Medieval armies were not composed only of warriors. They required clerks, smiths, cooks, laborers, drivers, engineers, servants, and suppliers. Specialized skills could create a place away from direct combat. But campaigns remained dangerous. A person with poor danger awareness or difficulty changing plans could be at particular risk. Discipline did not distinguish between refusal and overload. The wider medieval world complicates every generalization made so far. Latin Christian Europe provides many surviving sources familiar to English language audiences. But autism would not respect religious or political borders. Autistic people lived in Byzantine cities, Islamic caliphates and sultanates, Jewish communities, African kingdoms, Asian empires, and countless societies outside the narrow map. Often called medieval Europe, medical traditions differed. Scholars writing in Arabic preserved, criticized, and expanded Greek medicine. Hospitals in major Islamic cities could provide organized care, teaching, pharmacy, and wards for various illnesses. Physicians discussed melancholy, epilepsy, developmental conditions, and disorders of mind using frameworks that do not match modern psychiatry. Their work shows sophisticated observation without creating an autism diagnosis before its time. Jewish families and communities lived under varied legal and social conditions across Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. Religious law, household obligations, charity, education, and communal institutions shaped care. A Jewish autistic person in a prosperous urban community might have access to family networks and learning. Another facing persecution or expulsion could lose every protective structure at once. Byzantine religious culture included monasteries, hospitals, holy figures, court offices, and urban trades. Eastern Christian ideas about holy foolishness offered distinctive interpretations of unconventional behavior. Yet it would be wrong to turn cultural difference into a diagnostic map. The point is not that one civilization understood autism better. The point is that autistic lives were filtered through different systems of meaning. Even within one city, explanations could vary. A physician might speak of bodily balance. A priest might discuss sin, temptation, or innocence. A family might use a local nickname. A lawyer might focus on competence. A neighbor might see only inconvenience. The person remained one individual, while society produced several descriptions. Medieval medicine did recognize that minds and bodies varied from birth. Humoral theory associated temperament with bodily qualities. Medical writers described memory, speech, sleep, fear, melancholy, frenzy, and developmental limitation. Their categories were broad and often inaccurate by modern standards, but they were not simply random superstition. Practitioners observed patterns and tried to fit them into inherited systems. A physician could recommend diet, bathing, sleep, exercise, herbs, music, or changes in environment. Some advice might reduce distress accidentally. Regular sleep, less crowding, familiar food, and calm activity can help many people, autistic or not. Other treatments could be ineffective or dangerous. Purging and bloodletting did not become gentle merely because the doctor had excellent handwriting. Medical access depended on wealth and location. University-trained physicians served courts, cities, and wealthy clients. Surgeons, barber practitioners, midwives, apothecaries, monks, nuns, household healers, and folk specialists provided other forms of care. Most autistic traits would not bring a person to a physician unless they were associated with illness, seizures, loss of skills, severe behavior, or family concern. This matters because autism was not a disease category waiting to be discovered in a medieval pharmacy. Many autistic people would never have been considered sick. They were quiet, difficult, gifted, dependent, eccentric, reliable, troublesome, or beloved. Their difference became medical only when someone framed it as a problem of the body. Seizures may have attracted more attention. Epilepsy has a long history of medical and religious interpretation, and it occurs more often among autistic people than in the general population. A medieval autistic person with epilepsy might enter records because of seizures, not social communication. The surviving label would describe the most visible condition, while the broader developmental pattern remained hidden. Anxiety, sleep problems, gastrointestinal distress, and depression may also have shaped lives. Modern autistic people experience these conditions at elevated rates, though applying current statistics backward is unsafe. A person overwhelmed by social demands could withdraw. A person unable to communicate pain could become agitated. Medieval observers might separate each episode rather than recognize a connected pattern. Trauma adds another layer. Medieval life exposed many people to bereavement, violence, displacement, illness, and insecurity. Trauma can produce withdrawal, repetition, hypervigilance, speech changes, and sensory reactivity. A written description cannot always distinguish lifelong autistic traits from responses to traumatic events. Childhood evidence would be essential, and it is usually missing. This is why the search for a medieval case of autism repeatedly dissolves into uncertainty. The traits overlap with other conditions. The records are partial. The writers had agendas. The social environment changed behavior. The person cannot answer questions. Certainty would require inventing evidence, but uncertainty does not equal ignorance. We know autistic people must have existed because autism is part of human neurodevelopment, not a fashion created by modern diagnosis. We know medieval people recognized many kinds of mental and behavioral difference. We know families, religious institutions, law, work, and charity shaped survival. We know some environments rewarded repetition and focus, while others punished communication and sensory differences. These are strong conclusions, even without naming a single individual. Archaeology adds evidence of care, but rarely evidence of autism. Human remains can reveal injury, chronic disease, disability, diet, and sometimes long survival after serious impairment. Objects can reveal adapted tools or unusual burial treatment. Buildings reveal spaces of work, worship, and care. None can show social communication directly. The autistic mind does not leave a distinctive mark on bone. Burial context may show belonging. A person buried among family or community received at least some recognized place in death. Yet burial cannot tell us whether life included affection, ridicule, autonomy, or fear. A respectful grave does not erase possible suffering. An unusual grave does not prove exclusion. Archaeological interpretation requires the same humility as written sources. Household accounts sometimes record payments for dependents, clothing, food, guardians, or servants. Wills mention vulnerable relatives. Court cases describe competence. Miracle collections recount illness and recovery. Saints' lives describe extraordinary behavior. Each source offers a narrow window. None shows the whole room. The most honest reconstruction, therefore, uses several types of evidence and keeps the person larger than the category. A legal document may show how property was managed. A religious text may show available explanations. A craft object may show the labor environment. Modern autism research helps identify questions about sensory experience, communication, routine, and support. It should not be used as a stamp pressed onto historical names. First-person autistic perspectives are crucial, even though they come from the modern world. They remind historians that behavior visible from outside may have meanings observers miss. Covering ears may be protection, not disrespect. Repetition may regulate emotion. Avoiding eye contact may help concentration. Silence may occur under stress. Deep interest may create joy, identity, and connection, not merely isolation. This insight changes how medieval descriptions are read. Instead of asking whether an unusual person was defective, we can ask what the environment demanded and what the behavior accomplished. Did the person seek predictability? Was communication easier in familiar tasks? Did community interpretation create danger? What support made participation possible? These questions produce richer history, even when autism cannot be confirmed. They also correct the reference story's most attractive simplification. It is easy to picture medieval autistic people finding perfect roles as monks, scribes, craftsmen, and scholars. Some probably did find meaningful work. Many would not. Talent does not cancel disability. A structured occupation is not support if entry is blocked. Teaching is violent. Food is intolerable. Communication fails, or the person cannot perform every required task. The person who copied a manuscript for decades may have been autistic. The person who cleaned the room, prepared the parchment, carried meals, or needed help nearby may also have been autistic. History notices the beautiful page because it survived. Human value cannot be measured by whether someone produced an object worthy of a museum. To bring these patterns together, consider a representative life rather than a claimed historical case. The person is fictional, but every part of the setting is drawn from conditions that many medieval families knew. Let us call the child Martin, not because a record identifies him, but because history contains millions of people whose names were never written. A composite prevents one uncertain biography from carrying more evidence than it can bear. Martin is born into a household connected to a small market town in the later Middle Ages. His father repairs wooden agricultural tools. His mother manages food, poultry, cloth, customers, and the delicate art of preventing every household problem from becoming urgent at exactly the same moment. Several relatives live nearby. The family is neither wealthy nor destitute. One bad harvest would hurt. Two could change everything. As an infant, Martin reacts strongly to sound. He sleeps poorly when bells ring for festivals. He does not respond consistently to his name, though he notices the scrape of his father's knife against wood from another room. Speech develops slowly. He guides adults by the hand, places objects in front of them, and uses a few repeated words. His mother learns the meanings. A cup pushed twice means drink. A wool scrap pressed against her palm means he wants the quieter back room. Neighbors offer opinions because neighbors have never required an invitation. One says boys speak when they are ready. Another recommends a saint's shrine. A healer checks the child's mouth and ears. The parish priest advises patience and prayer. None of these actions is a diagnostic pathway. Together they show a community trying to explain what it sees. Martin dislikes being touched unexpectedly, but he will sit beside his older sister while she spins. He watches the spindle for long periods. He arranges wood shavings in lines and becomes distressed when someone sweeps them away before he is finished. His father first interprets this as misbehavior. Then he notices that the child can match pieces of wood by grain and shape with unusual accuracy. The household adapts slowly. The family warns Martin before market days. His sister walks with him along the less crowded lane. At church, they stand near an exit. He is permitted to hold a smooth wooden token during Mass. No one calls it a sensory aid. It is simply the object that helps him stay. Some weeks go well, others do not. During a crowded feast, a stranger takes the token as a joke. Martin screams and strikes him. The stranger calls him wicked. His mother retrieves the object and leaves with the child while enduring the attention of half the parish. By evening, the story has traveled farther than the family did. One version includes a knife. There was no knife. Accuracy has never been gossip's strongest professional skill. As Martin grows, formal schooling is limited. A local cleric attempts to teach him prayers. Martin memorizes their sound but struggles when questions are phrased differently. The cleric thinks he is refusing to answer. Martin's sister demonstrates that he can recite entire passages while carving marks into scrap wood. The method changes. Progress follows. At work, Martin learns through demonstration. His father assigns repeated tasks, beginning with sorting pegs and smoothing handles. He becomes reliable. Customers find conversation difficult because Martin answers literally and does not perform expected friendliness. His mother handles most bargaining. This arrangement uses the household as a network. One person manages social negotiation, another produces consistent work. Neither is fully independent, and neither needs to be. When routine changes, problems return. His father becomes ill. A cousin takes over the workshop and rearranges tools. Martin cannot work. The cousin calls him useless. His mother restores the old layout as closely as possible, and Martin gradually returns to the bench. From outside, the episode might look like laziness followed by discipline. From inside, it is a collapse of predictability followed by environmental repair. Martin reaches adulthood. He does not become a celebrated master whose genius transforms medieval engineering. He remains a competent worker in a family trade. He needs help with money, travel, and conflict. He contributes through tasks that suit him. He is loved by some people, tolerated by others, mocked by a few, and understood completely by no one. That final description applies to more human lives than history usually admits. If his family stays stable, Martin may live within the household for decades. If his parents die early, his future depends on siblings and property. A kind sister may protect his place. A brother facing debt may see him as another expense. A guild member may offer work. A stranger may exploit him. The diagnosis that never existed would not determine the outcome. Relationships would. Now, change one condition. Suppose Martin requires far more support. He does not understand fire, roads, or dangerous tools. He eats only a few foods, cannot reliably communicate pain, and has frequent seizures. The household cannot simply turn focused interest into employment. Someone must supervise him while also working. Sleep is interrupted. Food shortages become frightening. The family may still love him fiercely, but love now operates under relentless physical pressure. A wealthier household could hire help. A poor household might rely on siblings, neighbors, parish charity, or a religious house. If those supports failed, neglect could occur without deliberate cruelty. A caregiver cannot watch constantly while collecting water, tending animals, earning wages, and caring for other children. Medieval survival often demanded simultaneous tasks that modern support plans wisely separate. This second life is essential because autism history cannot be told only through people who fit valued occupations. Autistic people with extensive needs existed too. Their absence from records reflects the priorities of writers, not the absence of their humanity. They may never have copied a book or designed a roof. Their lives still shaped families, decisions, emotions, and communities. Change another condition and make the child a girl. Call her Anna. She speaks early, imitates her mother, memorizes social expectations, and hides distress until she is alone. She becomes highly skilled at embroidery and remembers complex household sequences. Adults describe her as quiet and diligent. Nobody sees the effort required to appear calm at church, market, and family gatherings. Anna's focused interests fit women's work, so they attract praise rather than investigation. She knows dyes, threads, saints' days, and patterns. She repeats conversations privately before speaking. A sudden marriage proposal throws the household into celebration and Anna into terror. The future husband is respectable. The new home is unfamiliar. The legal and social world asks whether the match is suitable, not whether the transition will overwhelm her nervous system. She marries. Perhaps the new household appreciates her precision. Perhaps her mother-in-law reads withdrawal as pride. Perhaps childbirth, noise, sleep deprivation, and constant touch exceed her ability to cope. Perhaps she becomes known as cold because affection is expressed through work rather than expected gesture. Perhaps a daughter learns to recognize when she needs silence. Again, the outcome turns on context. These composite lives do not prove medieval autism. Modern biology already makes historical existence likely. The lives instead reveal how the same neurodevelopmental differences could produce different social identities. Useful son, difficult apprentice, modest wife, strange neighbor, holy recluse, natural fool, skilled clerk, burdensome dependent. None of these labels captures the whole person. Modern diagnosis emerged through a long and complicated history. The word autism entered medical language in the 20th century and changed meaning over time. Early descriptions focused on narrow groups. Later research recognized a broader spectrum and the importance of development, communication, repetitive behavior, sensory experience, and varied support needs. Diagnostic categories expanded, merged, and were debated. Even now, autism is not understood through one simple cause or one universal presentation. This history matters because it prevents a false comparison. Medieval people did not possess today's correct diagnosis while choosing to call it something superstitious. Modern understanding itself developed gradually and remains incomplete. We should not stand at the end of a complicated process and pretend the path was obvious. Future researchers may revise ideas that currently feel settled. At the same time, humility must not become an excuse for saying nothing. Autistic people are sometimes told that increasing diagnosis means autism is entirely new. History challenges that assumption. Better recognition can reveal people who were always present. Changes in criteria, awareness, survival, education, and access all affect who receives a label. A diagnosis can become more common without the underlying human variation appearing from nowhere. The medieval question also exposes how strongly disability depends on environment. Modern diagnostic criteria consider whether traits create significant challenges in daily life. Daily life changes across cultures. A person who struggles in a fast, noisy, socially fluid workplace might function differently in a predictable family workshop. A person who benefits from modern communication technology might have faced severe restriction before it existed. Neither environment reveals a pure, context-free version of autism. Support needs are real, but the form of support changes. A medieval household might provide constant familiar presence, but no clinical knowledge. A modern family may have expert information, but less extended kin nearby. A monastery might offer routine but demand obedience. A modern institution may offer services but create sensory overload. Progress cannot be measured only by the number of specialists. It must be measured by safety, autonomy, communication, belonging, and quality of life. Autonomy deserves special attention. Medieval care often assumed decisions would be made by family, guardian, clergy, master, or lord. This could protect a vulnerable person from danger, but it could also erase preference. Modern support aims, at its best, to help people communicate and exercise choice. The lesson from history is not that families should control everything. It is that communication must be recognized even when it does not take conventional form. A person who turns away may be refusing, A person who returns repeatedly may be choosing. A gesture, object, movement, or change in behavior can carry meaning. Medieval families may have learned these signals informally. Modern systems can learn from first-person autistic testimony, communication science, and technology. The ethical improvement lies in treating the person as a participant, not merely a problem to manage. The past also warns against measuring worth through productivity. Medieval survival made work central, and modern retellings often praise autistic traits only when they create valuable output. Precision becomes admirable when it produces a manuscript. Repetition becomes meaningful when it produces cloth. Memory becomes worthy when it serves administration. What happens when a person cannot convert difference into profit, beauty, or scholarship? Human value cannot depend on economic usefulness. Medieval charity sometimes affirmed this through the duty to feed and shelter people who could not repay. Yet charity could preserve hierarchy. Modern rights language goes further by insisting that disabled people possess value and claims as people, not as opportunities for others to display virtue. This principle is one of the clearest areas in which moral language has improved, even when practice remains imperfect. The past warns against the opposite error as well. Disability should not be reduced to tragedy. Autistic lives include joy, attachment, interest, humor, pride, frustration, exhaustion, and ordinary routine. A medieval autistic child may have delighted in bells even while another feared them. One person may have loved crowded festivals. Another may have found peace in repetitive work. There was never one autistic medieval experience, because there is no single autistic experience now. We should also be cautious with the language of hidden genius. It is emotionally satisfying to claim that autistic minds secretly built every cathedral, preserved every book, and advanced every science. The claim is impossible to prove and unfair to the many workers involved. It also turns acceptance into a bargain. Society will value difference, but only if difference produces wonders. A more honest history makes no such demand. Some autistic people probably made remarkable contributions. Some performed ordinary work. Some needed extensive care. Some were happy. Some suffered. Most combined several of these realities across a lifetime. They deserve historical imagination without being forced into inspiration. What would a medieval autistic person think of the modern world? The question is playful but revealing. Indoor plumbing might receive immediate approval. Electric lighting could be useful or unbearable. A supermarket would offer consistent packaged food and a sensory assault involving music, refrigeration, bright signs, and one cart with a wheel determined to make a rhythmic, clicking sound through every aisle. Modern communication could be liberating. Writing to distant people with shared interests would have been unimaginable for most medieval villagers. Noise reduction, soft clothing, reliable heating, medical treatment, speech devices, and legal rights could transform life. So could predictable transportation and detailed maps. Yet constant notifications, rapid change, crowded schools, job interviews, bureaucracy, and the expectation of immediate response might feel bewildering. The comparison reminds us that progress creates new supports and new demands. Medieval society offered familiar local networks but little privacy. Modern society offers privacy but can produce isolation. Medieval work could be repetitive but physically punishing. Modern work can be safer but socially complex. Neither world is naturally suited to every mind. The best lesson is therefore not that autistic people belonged more easily in the Middle Ages. It is that belonging is built. It emerges when environments recognize difference, when communication is respected, when routines are explained before they change, when sensory needs are taken seriously, and when Support does not depend on producing exceptional work. Historical study can contribute by refusing to erase. Even without names, autistic people can be included in our picture of the past. When we describe a village, we should imagine varied communication and sensory experience. When we discuss a monastery, we should remember both those who loved routine and those who struggled with bells. When we describe disability care, we should include families and caregivers whose labor never entered chronicles. This approach changes the meaning of absence. The lack of a medieval autism diagnosis no longer means autistic people were absent. It means the archive was not designed to identify them. The absence of first-person writing no longer means they lacked inner lives. It means literacy, preservation, and social power controlled whose words survived. There may be undiscovered documents that offer richer descriptions. A court deposition could reveal an adult communicating through familiar signs. A household account could show long-term support. A letter might describe a child with sensory distress or intense routine. Even then, responsible language would remain conditional. The goal is understanding, not collecting historical celebrities for a modern category. Scholars debating retrospective diagnosis often worry that refusing labels can make disability disappear. That concern is valid. If every historical description is dismissed as unknowable, the past becomes populated only by supposedly typical people. The solution is not certainty. It is careful possibility. We can discuss autism-like traits, neurodivergent experience, and probable historical presence while being explicit about limits. The distinction between saying autistic people lived in the Middle Ages and saying this named person was autistic is crucial. The first rests on the continuity of human biology and broad historical reasoning. The second requires individual evidence that is usually unavailable. Confidence should match the claim. The word probably in the original question, therefore, does important work. Medieval people probably included autistic individuals. In fact, given the size and duration of medieval populations, the broader existence is difficult to doubt, but the word does not license a list of diagnoses. It opens a field of questions about survival, meaning, support, and silence. One final dimension deserves space, because historical descriptions of autism too often turn autistic people into solitary figures without friendship, romance, humor, or desire. Some autistic people prefer limited company. Others want connection intensely and struggle with the unwritten steps required to achieve it. Many enjoy social life in familiar forms. Medieval communities offered relationships that were restrictive in some ways and surprisingly enduring in others. Friendship grew through repeated contact. People worked beside the same neighbors, worshipped in the same parish, visited the same market, and shared seasonal labor year after year. A person who found first meetings difficult might benefit from a world where many relationships developed slowly and then lasted for decades. There was less need to introduce oneself constantly when everyone already knew who had fallen into the millstream at the age of 9 and had been reminded of it at every harvest feast since. Familiarity could reduce the burden of explanation. A friend learned that silence did not mean anger. A sibling knew that a direct answer was not an insult. A coworker understood that plans should be stated clearly. These understandings may never have been spoken aloud. They became habits within the relationship. In this sense, long local memory could function as informal support. The same closeness could make rejection difficult to escape. A damaged reputation followed a person through church, work, marriage negotiations, and trade. There was no new school across town where childhood ridicule disappeared. A community that accepted difference could offer lifelong belonging. A community that refused could create lifelong confinement. Stability magnified kindness and cruelty alike. Play also mattered. Medieval children used balls, hoops, dolls, knucklebones, songs, riddles, animals, imitation, and games that left little trace in written records. An autistic child might join through parallel activity, repeated rules, physical play, or shared interest rather than easy conversation. Another might avoid unpredictable games, but spend hours constructing, sorting, collecting, or observing. Adults may have interpreted this simply as temperament. Rules can make social activity easier. A board game, song, dance sequence, work bee, or religious procession tells participants what to do next. Open-ended conversation demands constant interpretation. Structured activity gives attention a common object. Medieval life contained many such forms. People spun together, harvested together, prayed together, walked pilgrimage routes, prepared feasts, and repaired buildings. Connection often happened while hands were occupied. This may have suited some autistic people who communicate more comfortably beside others than directly toward them. A person could share labor without maintaining eye contact. Friendship could grow through reliability. Affection could be shown by repairing a tool, saving a preferred food, walking the same path, or keeping a place by the fire. Historical sources favor declarations and ceremonies, but daily care often speaks through action. Romantic and sexual lives are even harder to recover. Autism does not remove the capacity for attraction, love, partnership, or family. Medieval marriage was shaped by property, kin, religion, work, class, and local custom. But personal preference still mattered in many situations. An autistic person might marry, remain single, enter religious life, form an informal relationship, or experience coercion. There is no reason to imagine one outcome as typical. Communication differences could complicate courtship. Indirect signals, family negotiation, public reputation, and gender expectations created a dense social puzzle. Yet courtship was often supervised and embedded in community, which reduced some ambiguity while increasing pressure. Families could assist a match. They could also force one. A person who struggled to express refusal was vulnerable, especially where social power was unequal. Within a supportive marriage, complementary skills could matter more than conversational elegance. One partner negotiated at market, the other managed records or animals. One tolerated travel, the other maintained stable household systems. Medieval marriage literature often praised patience, fidelity, and cooperation because households required them. An unusual communication style did not prevent partnership when both people learned how to work together. Parenthood presented its own complexity. Autistic adults could become attentive, loving parents, just as they do now. Predictable infant routines might be comforting until the infant ignored them completely, an activity in which infants have displayed considerable historical expertise. Crying, touch, sleep loss, and constant interruption could be overwhelming. Extended households might distribute care, though they could also increase sensory and social demands. Autistic traits may have appeared across generations in the same family. A parent who shared sensitivities or communication patterns might understand a child intuitively, even without naming the resemblance. Family stories sometimes describe a child as being exactly like an uncle or grandmother. Such comparisons could normalize difference. They could also repeat harmful treatment if the older relative had been forced to endure it. Joy should not be lost beneath discussion of risk. Focused interests bring pleasure. Repetition can feel satisfying. Sensory experiences can delight as strongly as they overwhelm. A person sensitive to sound might suffer during bells and love the controlled pattern of chant. Someone avoiding rough cloth might take deep pleasure in smooth wood or fine thread. A child fascinated by water might watch a mill stream for hours, learning its changes with an attention others never developed. Medieval culture offered music, color, movement, food, animals, stories, ritual, landscape, and craft. Autistic people would have encountered these not only as challenges, but as sources of interest and happiness. The point is not to paint hardship in cheerful colors. It is to remember that disabled life is still life, containing moments that do not exist to teach anyone a lesson. Humor, too, belongs here. Autistic people are often stereotyped as lacking humor when they may simply use or interpret it differently. Medieval humor ranged from wordplay and satire to practical jokes that should probably have been retired several centuries earlier. A literal person might miss one joke and deliver another with perfect dryness. Friends who understood the style could value it. Written records cannot capture every laugh around a workbench. These ordinary connections matter because they resist two distortions. One portrays autistic people as tragic victims, entirely outside society. The other portrays them as isolated geniuses whose only relationships are with books, stones, or numbers. Most lives are less dramatic. People form attachments, misunderstand one another, repair misunderstandings, share chores, become irritated, reconcile, and continue. Medieval autistic people likely did the same. Their social worlds may have been smaller than those of modern people, but smaller does not mean empty. One reliable friendship can shape a life. One sibling can preserve communication. One spouse can protect choice. One community can turn difference into a recognized part of local life. The archive rarely records these quiet successes because nothing went wrong enough to require a court. Silence may sometimes hide suffering. It may also hide ordinary belonging. Return now to the child beneath the blanket as the bell rings. The household does not know why the sound hurts, yet someone may lower their voice. Someone may leave the door unlatched so the child can step outside. Someone may scold. Someone may laugh. Someone may notice the child is calmer when given a familiar task. These small responses determine the shape of the morning. Across years, mornings become a life. Repeated kindness can create trust. Repeated misunderstanding can create fear. A suitable task can offer identity. A sudden loss can remove every support. No grand theory is required for either outcome. History happens through daily reactions, as much as through kings and battles. Somewhere in the medieval world, an autistic person likely found deep satisfaction in a pattern repeated correctly. Somewhere, another person was punished for a response no one understood. One may have spoken several languages. Another may have spoken no words. One may have lived behind noble walls. Another may have depended on alms. They were not symbols of hidden progress. They were people living the only lives available to them. We cannot recover their thoughts with certainty. We can refuse to imagine that everyone in the past experienced the world in the same way. That refusal is not a diagnosis. It is historical accuracy. The Middle Ages did not have autism clinics, diagnostic manuals, sensory profiles, or the language of neurodiversity. They had families learning one another, communities enforcing customs, institutions offering care, and individuals whose minds did not always match the expectations around them. Some differences became strengths, some became disabilities. Most became both at different moments. The modern world has better tools. It can assess development, support communication, treat co-occurring conditions, reduce preventable danger, and listen directly to autistic people. Those achievements matter. They should make us more humble, not more eager to diagnose across centuries. Knowledge is valuable when it improves lives, not when it merely wins arguments about famous monks. Perhaps the deepest connection between medieval and modern autistic experience is not found in a monastery or manuscript. It is found in the desire to be understood without being reduced, to have distress recognized before it becomes crisis, to have focused joy shared rather than mocked, to receive help without losing personhood, to belong without performing a false version of oneself every waking hour. That desire is not medieval or modern. It is human. The bell eventually stops. The room becomes quiet. The child releases the blanket and listens to the familiar sounds of the household. A knife moves across wood. Grain pours into a bowl. Footsteps cross the same boards in the same order as yesterday. The day is beginning again. No record will mention this morning. No chronicler will preserve the child's name. Yet lives that leave no document are still part of history. The page may be silent. Humanity was not.